So right now we're focusing on the recovery effort. Obviously the fire has blown through this area, and while it might seem that the active firefighting is over, we move into a whole nother process, and that is to help the residents who have lost their homes recover. And if that means we're shoulder to shoulder sifting through ashes, then that's what that means. Our residents are part of our family. These are people that we protect day in and day out when we come to work, and that doesn't stop after major wildfires.
We looked out the windows, saw a lot of smoke in the canyon, and cars going down the road with horns of blaring saying, "Get out of here, get out of here." And we grabbed the cat and my wife said, "We got to get out of here now." And so that's what we left with, the clothes on our back, and that's about it. The things that we knew were there, like there was a motorcycle in the garage, no sign of it anywhere. Just so many things like that just gone,
Well, new regulations on California emissions could actually lead to higher gas prices here in Nevada.
The state's Air Resources Board voting to move forward with the controversial plan tonight. It's meant to reduce planet warming emission, but drivers here at home don't think it should cost them.
8 News Now anchor Sasha Loftus joins us tonight with more.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
A move made a state over that could mean higher prices here at home.
As a driver, it would keep my gas tank from being full.
On Friday, the California Air Resources Board voted to pass stricter state regulations to reduce fuel emissions while also funding electric car charging stations.
Working families in our inland region, many of whom lack access to reliable alternatives to driving, are deserving of more state resources to facilitate their transportation needs.
The plan called a win for the state's climate goals, but could cause a hiccup here in Las Vegas.
And I hate that us being like the neighboring states, like everything they do always affects us because we get a lot of stuff from them.
Since 90% of Nevada's gas supply comes from California, higher refinery costs could push our prices up by 47 to 65 cents per gallon starting in 2025.
Staff's proposal that's in front of the board today changes that dynamic.
Drivers in southern Nevada say they can't knock the reasons behind the change, but don't know if they can handle another hike.
Reducing carbon emissions is a good thing. It's like, but could you find another way to do that financially without putting the cost on the driver?
A cost that trickles down to all aspects of life that rely on transportation.
I really hope they don't go up no more. I really don't.
Now that vote passed 12-2. It's also set to phase out incentives for capturing methane emissions from California dairy farms to turn into fuel, which could encourage farmers to leave the state.
The automakers are hitting a reverse on jobs. Major players such as Nissan, Audi and Stellantis are announcing thousands of job cuts globally. And our next report delves into the factors that are driving these changes and what it means for the global auto industry. Take a look.
Nissan, Audi and Stellantis are leading a wave of job cuts in the auto industry as global demand for cars softens. Nissan announced that it will be reducing its workforce by 9,000 positions, part of a broader strategy to address declining sales. In addition, the company is planning to sell its entire 34% stake in Mitsubishi Motors, aiming to reduce costs and focus resources on electric vehicle development. These decisions come amid rising financial pressures as the global shift towards EVs drives automakers to make drastic adjustments. Stellantis is also making significant workforce cuts, with plans to eliminate around 2,700 jobs in Italy alone. The company's decision reflects challenges in balancing traditional car production with EV investments, as the automotive industry undergoes a transformation. At the same time, Audi is implementing phased layoffs of up to 6,000 workers as part of its strategic shift to all-electric production by 2033. This transition aims to help Audi reduce emissions and streamline operations, but it's clear that the shift will impact employment levels across the industry. The broader implications of these job cuts are significant, with automakers struggling to manage rising production costs and shifting consumer preferences. Nissan, Audi and Stellantis' workforce reductions signal a realignment in the global auto market. The move towards electric vehicles is pressing automakers to restructure, leading to a steady rise in layoffs worldwide. Industry analysts predict that this trend will continue as companies seek efficiency and profitability in an increasingly competitive market. Trump's anti-EV stance is also set to weigh in on their future plans. For now, these layoffs highlight the immediate effects of a rapidly evolving automotive landscape. Business Bureau, WION, World is One.
New details we're learning about the violence aimed at Israeli soccer fans in the Netherlands and the reaction in Israel. That's where ABC's Britt Clennett joins us live from Tel Aviv this morning with the very latest. Britt, good morning to you.
Good morning, Janae. Amsterdam now banning demonstrations for 3 days after what authorities described as hateful anti-Semitic violence against Israeli soccer fans. This morning, emergency measures in Amsterdam following an outbreak of violent attacks on Israeli soccer fans. Now you know how it feels, sir. Police launching a major investigation after supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv were ambushed and beaten in what Amsterdam's mayor described as hit-and-run attacks, condemned by Israeli and Dutch officials as anti-Semitic. Video circulating online showing a man being chased down. Another video showing someone being attacked in the street and what appears to be the person behind the camera shouting, "That's Gaza," while throwing firecrackers as he attempts to run away. More than 60 people were arrested, 10 of them are still being held. Dozens were injured, several hospitalized with their injuries.
It's a terrible anti-Semitic attack, and we will not tolerate. And we will prosecute the perpetrators. And I'm deeply ashamed that it could happen in the Netherlands in 2024.
Dutch law enforcement officials saying the attacks were sparked by earlier social media posts targeting Jews. But tension had been building for days. Videos showing a man tearing down a Palestinian flag as a nearby crowd chants anti-Arab remarks. Despite a ban on pro-Palestinian demonstrations near the area, protesters showing up anyway, expressing anger over the wars in Gaza and Lebanon. And according to posts online, they were ready for violence. President Biden condemning those attacks as despicable. There was already a rise in anti-Semitism in Europe. Since the war in Gaza began, it's only gotten worse. Gio?
President-elect Donald Trump is taking more calls from world leaders today. This afternoon, he talked with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. She says he raised questions about the border.
Meanwhile, President-elect Trump is also denying reports that he plans to sell his social media platform, Truth Social. Now, he's been relatively silent since his big win, working on building his cabinet and speaking today with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Multiple sources tell ABC News Elon Musk joined that call, which raises questions about how much influence he will have in the future administration. So far, President-elect Trump has announced Susan Wiles as his chief of staff, and multiple sources say Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is the leading candidate for U.S. ambassador to the United Nations.
President-elect Trump brought up the issue of the border during his first call with Mexico's president. During a conference today, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said that her first conversation with President-elect Trump was cordial. Both reportedly congratulated each other on electoral wins. She said at one point the former president brought up the issue of the border, but Sheinbaum says the two leaders will have room to talk about it. It's not clear if Sheinbaum will attend the president-elect's inauguration.
Tonight, hundreds of miles south of the border in Mexico, a caravan of migrants chanting, "We are not criminals," is rushing to make it to the U.S.-Mexico border before the Trump administration is sworn in. Many carrying their belongings in plastic bags and on their backs, and already starting to voice their fears about not being able to cross into the United States come January. "I think it will be much more complicated now," says this man who's traveling from Venezuela. "Now we are thinking about finding a way to get through before Trump takes the presidency." DHS officials telling NBC News that they have not yet seen a surge in migrants heading to the United States, but that they want CBP and ICE officials to be prepared.
One of the first calls I'm going to make is to Mexico. You stop letting people come in through our border.
Trump now vowing to deport millions of undocumented migrants, saying his plan has, quote, no price tag. He's also threatening to impose a tariff of 25% on Mexican imports unless Mexico's government curbs what he describes as an onslaught of immigration. Those promises now creating uncertainty and anxiety among migrants making the taxing journey. This caravan, which set off with nearly 3,000 people on Election Day, has dwindled to just about half of its original size, according to Reuters. This man from Venezuela saying now that Trump has won, he doesn't know what to do, but returning to Venezuela for him is like being shot in the head. Migrants in Mexican border cities waiting for legal entry through the CBP-1 program now also worried their plans might be upended. Some, like this woman, are anxious that the appointments they've waited months for under the CBP-1 program could be canceled. On Friday, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum saying she had a, quote, very friendly phone call with Trump in which they congratulated each other's presidential wins and said there will be time in the future to discuss the border issue. Time that many migrants now fear is running out for them.
Okay, Ellison Barber joins us now in studio. So, Ellison, going back to that CBP-1 app that you mentioned, this is something the Biden administration set up. Has the Trump administration or the Trump team said anything yet about what they're going to do with that?
So it's interesting because they obviously spend so much time talking about their plans as it relates to the U.S.-Mexico border. But in terms of comments about CBP-1 in particular, really not a lot of detailed comments from Donald Trump himself. However, back in mid-September, we did find where he mentioned CBP-1 in a post on X and Truth Social. He said in part this, quote, "We will stop all migrant flights, end all illegal entries, terminate the Kamala phone app for smuggling illegals," put in parentheses there, CBP-1 app, and then he went on to list a couple of other things. So he talked about it.
And that can be kind of chaotic because people are in the queue already in some
Right, people are in the queue, and what he hasn't said, which is what's making so many people panic, he's made this comment saying, I would terminate that app, but hasn't said when that would happen, hasn't said how, or how it would fit into his broader immigration policies moving forward, and that's part of why so many people are like, we don't know what's going to happen next, but you said you might get rid of this. Even if it was in that one post, it's leading to a lot of additional questions.
And I'm sure we'll learn in January as soon as he takes office.
And now moving to China, several American companies are planning to shift their production out of China after President-elect Donald Trump's victory. Throughout his campaign, the Republican threatened to impose 60 to 100% tariffs on goods imported from China. He also promised to slap as much as 20% tariffs on items from other countries like Mexico.
We have tremendous economic power. And by the way, if we're not careful, we're not going to have that for long either. That's going to go down the tubes with everything else. But if China or some other country is behaving badly, we have things called tariffs that are so severe.
The U.S. headquartered shoemaker Steve Madden said it has decided to reduce production in China by around 45% and is shifting operations to countries like Vietnam and Cambodia. Meanwhile, Whirlpool says Americans can expect to see higher prices on microwaves if, in fact, Donald Trump goes through with the increased tariffs. America's Oil-Dri Corporation, which makes cat litter, says China is the only place where they source their material. Hence, the prices of cat litter may also surge in the United States. Another company, Church & Dwight, known for oral care products, has already moved some of its production out of China, fearing new taxes. Experts believe Donald Trump's tariff proposal will widely disrupt supply chains and severely impact U.S. trade policy.
At least in terms of the U.S. trade policy towards China, my guess is that they'll look back at where the last trade discussion went during the first Trump administration, and I suspect the Trump administration will say that we still have unfinished business here. So certainly the signals we've gotten so far are a lot more tariffs, or at least the threat of that. I believe that Trump's threat of 60% tariffs will likely happen, and that he has actually voiced it several occasions in the past, and including his most recent 3-hour interview on the Joe Rogan interview show.
Moreover, Taiwan has also said that it will too relocate production out of China, fearing tariffs from the Trump administration. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which is the world's largest contract chip maker, is already investing $65 billion in Arizona to set up new factories. Meanwhile, China has responded to Donald Trump's threat, saying tariffs and discussions on Taiwan won't help anyone.
With regard to your question on Trump's proposed tariffs on China, from the outset, we will not answer this hypothetical question. But as a matter of principle, I would like to reiterate this. No one will win a trade war, nor will it benefit the world over Taiwan question. The Taiwan question is the most important and sensitive issue in Sino-US relations. China firmly opposes any form of official interaction between the United States and Taiwan.
Donald Trump is set to take the oath of office in January, and only then will the business world learn if, in fact, he plans to resume a bruising trade war with the world's second largest economy, China.
President-elect Donald Trump has said he will reevaluate the country's role in NATO, end the war in Ukraine, and restore travel bans from majority Muslim countries, among other priorities in a return to office. Here are the America First foreign policy promises he's made for his second term. The president-elect has said he will reject the advice of generals, bureaucrats, diplomats, lobbyists, and defense contractors who have pushed for war and replaced the, quote, warmongers and frauds and failures in the government with, quote, competent national security officials who believe in defending America's vital interest above all. Trump, who offered broad support for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his first term, has also vowed to bring peace in the Middle East, where tensions have been rapidly escalating since the start of Israel's war with Hamas more than 1 year ago, but has said little about how, other than urging Israel to, quote, finish the job. In September, Trump said he would reinstate the, quote, famous travel ban that stopped people from some predominantly Muslim countries from visiting the U.S. and expand it to include refugees from, quote, terror-infested areas like the Gaza Strip. The president-elect has promised to take a hard stance on China by pressuring the country to sell off, quote, any current holdings that threaten the country's national and economic security, and impose new restrictions on Chinese-owned infrastructure in the U.S. Trump has proposed imposing baseline tariffs on most foreign goods, tariffs as high as 60% on all Chinese imports and 100% on Mexican goods, in hopes of spurring American manufacturing. Quote, as tariffs on foreign countries go up, taxes on American workers, families, and businesses can come down, his policy plan says. President Joe Biden re-entered the Paris Climate Agreement after Trump withdrew in his first term, but Trump has said he plans to again back out, calling the accords a, quote, ripoff because the United States pays more than other countries. Trump's first term was defined by what he called an America First foreign policy, which he has promised to return to in his second term. For more on this story, check out Mary Whitfield-Raffles' article in the link in the description.
Russian forces are stepping up their air attacks on the Ukrainian cities and towns, sending swarms of drones almost every single night. Ukraine claims that a Russian drone strike killed at least about one person and left 13 others injured in the Black Sea port of Odessa. Several residential apartments, buildings, private houses, commercial buildings and private cars were damaged in the second day of the drone attacks. The Ukrainian authorities claim that Russia launched about 51 drones. The focus of the attack was Odessa and the nearby regions in the south of Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force claims that its air defense units and mobile drone hunter groups shot down about 32 drones. 18 drones were lost, meaning that they were thwarted electronically.
І дуже гучний вибух стався, що навіть внизу полетів цей пил. Все на нас, Боже, всі кричать, діти, це жах. Ми повибігали, тут дим від машин, цей дим, сюди неможливо було квартиру пробратися.
Now, Ukraine's military has said that Russia launched over 2,000 attack drones at the civilian and military targets in October. However, Moscow has maintained that it does not target civilians. Ukraine claims that it launched a drone attack on a weapons factory in central Russia. Now, the attack at the Alekseyevsky chemical plant, Yezhev produces gunpowder, ammunition and weapons in the Tula region, which is about 200 kilometers south of Moscow. Now, Kiev claims that the attack was in fact part of its strategy to target factories that support Moscow's war against Ukraine. Russia claims that its forces have shot down about 50 Ukrainian drones in 7 Russian regions overnight. Russia has also claimed that it had seized about 6 more settlements in Ukraine in the past week, while Ukraine has reported persistent tensions on the front lines. In a weekly report, the Russian Defense Ministry has said that the Russian military launched about 38 rounds of attacks using precision-guided weapons and drones against the Ukrainian enterprises. It's also claimed energy facilities, military airports and military drone production and storage facilities were targeted in Ukraine.
think that there's any reason for people to worry because I just don't foresee anything terrible, like anything irreversible happening. So I wouldn't worry about it personally.
I know a lot of people in red states. I know a lot of trans people who will be personally affected by this. And I know that, people will die because of this.
I honestly don't know. And that's what makes me the most fearful.
I think it'll create a more hostile environment.
Trans people were already scared. And I think they have every reason to be. And I think that's even more true now. And I can't help but worry for especially people of color, trans people of color.
It's taken so long to get such little progress, and it can all go away in an instant, and honestly see the rates going up.
Trump doesn't care about LGBTQ rights, doesn't care about black rights, doesn't care about women's rights. He wants to bring us back to a world where everyone is straight and white and thinks the same way. You guys think that the biggest obstacle right now is that we've elected Trump, but I'm telling you, JD Vance is the one we should be concerned about.
No sex with men, no dating men, no getting married to men, and no having children. These are the things some women in the US are promising to do in response to Donald Trump winning the election. It's inspired by the 4B movement.
If y'all insist on making women second-class citizens, we don't have to give you our body.
4B was started by women in South Korea. It's a feminist idea guided by 4 Korean words beginning with B. Biyeon means no heterosexual marriage, Bichulsan means no giving birth, Byeonye means no dating, and Bisekseo means no sex. The women in the movement say it's a way to fight against the patriarchy and misogyny, and that's why women in the US, who are worried about what could happen to abortion rights and reproductive freedoms under Trump's presidency, are signing up. They say it's a way to protest, keep themselves safe, and take back control over their bodies.
We have to take it back by limiting who we give our bodies to.
And with all this talk of reproductive rights, it's no coincidence The Handmaid's Tale has shot to the top of Amazon's best-selling books list since Trump's re-election. Trump said he won't make abortion illegal nationwide, but he has supported individual states bringing in their own bans. Do you think the 4B movement will take off?